Hello and welcome to TGIK live from the Heptio studios in lovely downtown Seattle, where we have a lovely view of my favorite mountain right on the other side of the screen here. Hi, how's everybody doing today? It's good to see everyone. So we like to start off and we like to see who's all joining us today in the YouTube chat. So folks can join in live and they can participate in the chat and help me out if I get stuck or I need help along the way. So it's just a lot of fun, and one of the first things we do is we spend a little bit of time and tell people hi who are joining us. So it looks like Bob was our first chat this week. I think Bob got here pretty early before we even started. It's good to see you, Bob. Looks like he's joining from Hollywood and coming for KubeCon next week. So I think that's exciting. KubeCon is next week here in Seattle. So if folks want to get together or have any questions about Seattle, I live here, Joe lives here, our office is here, we know a thing or two, so feel free to hit us up and we can help you out along the way. And we'll talk more about KubeCon here in a little bit. So we have a decent, good to see you again. We have George. I think it's something Jersey, so I think that's Spanish for New Jersey, but somebody who can speak Spanish or whatever language that is can probably deter it better than I can. Sean Smith, good to see you. Sean wants to know who's going to KubeCon. We should do that really quick. In the chat, real quick, do a +1 if you're going to be at KubeCon, and maybe introduce yourself and say hi, and so folks just get an idea of who from the TGIK audience, which is from all over the world, is going to be here in Seattle hanging out, learning about Kubernetes next week at the conference. It looks like we have Philip from Germany, we have Philippe from Paris, we have somebody from France, so we have a really good European representation here. I guess, I don't know if everybody's in the European Union anymore. That stuff is confusing to me. Anyway, George is here, so George is helping us out. So, hi everyone, this is George. I'll be helping Kris today. And as usual, we have a Hack MD, which we'll pull that up here in a second. We'll start going through some of the links and some of the exciting updates for the week. Olaf, hi from Denmark. We have Antoine, also from Paris. We have Roy from Toronto. Saeed, I lost my spot. Where'd you go, Saeed? Hi from London. We have Leonardo from Brazil. Francisco, CTM Cisco from Chicago, Logan Square. Hi from Austria, Washington, D.C., Phoenix. Oh, Todd says, my first KubeCon is next week. Can't wait. If I find Joe or Kris, you get a beer or whatever beverage might be on me. Yeah, so we would love to see you. Feel free to come up to myself or to Joe. I'm going to go ahead and sign Joe up for this because this is just what I do. But we'll be around. We'll be hanging out the Heptio booth. I have a lot of stuff going on. I know Joe also has a lot of stuff going on. So if you see us in the hallway and want to stop and say hi or grab a selfie or just check in and meet us and shake some hands, we would love to meet you. We love meeting people who tune in for TGIK, and it would be a great opportunity to meet you. So don't be shy. Come up and track us down if you need to. Hi from Phoenix. We have a lot of +1. So it looks like we have Bob, Sin, Todd. Aw, Mike got a -1 and a sad face. Poor Mike. Sean's going to be at KubeCon. Mohammed says, can anyone please guide me? It's my first. Mohammed, if you need help, I'm sure there's folks here who could offer some mentorship. If not, the Kubernetes community offers some mentorship. And if there's anything I can do, feel free to ping me, and I'm happy to help as well. Hi from San Jose. Good morning from, we have more -1. Saeed and Waleed both are -1s. That's really, all the sad faces are so sad. No. Hi from Finland. Suresh is with a -1. Hello from San Francisco. Hello from Brazil. Hi from Portland. So for all of our -1s from around the world, we do have the CNCF, and I helped kind of start this a little bit, and especially help grow it to where it is today. We do have a diversity and inclusion scholarship, which could help offset some of the cost from traveling around the world if you meet any of the criteria. So if you want to talk more about that, or you think you might be eligible, don't be shy. We can get you signed up for the next KubeCon and hopefully get you out to a KubeCon at some point if needed. I've been able to pull a few strings in my day, but we definitely want to make sure that people who can really take advantage of the opportunities that KubeCon has to offer can get help if they need help. So feel free to reach out to me as well. Okay, so Mohammed says the KubeCon schedule is overwhelming. Any tips? Mohammed, I usually do the hallway track and see what people are talking about, and that's how I pick my conferences. So that's my secret Nova KubeCon strategy is I kind of just hang out and talk to folks, and then usually I just notice that more talks seem exciting than others, and then those are the ones that get my attention. Also, I go and I talk to a lot of my friends in the community and see what they're talking about beforehand. We have a couple of links in the HackMD that we're about to look at, so those are a good starting point as well. If you want to see my talks, one of my talks, or any of the other Heptonian talks, we'll get you some info on that in a second. Sean says, yeah, Joe was super cool, though busy when I met him at reInvent last week. And Solomon, hi from Cloud Native Wales. Okay, intros. Feel free to keep talking KubeCon, but I'm going to switch over to the HackMD here that George linked above in the chat. Wait, it's on the side, up in the chat here. So let's go back over to the screen in my face, and here is our HackMD. And Waleed says, would you say that KubeCon US is the best, or are they just different between the European and the Chinese? So a little bit of history. I think KubeCon started here in the United States. This is the second time I have been to KubeCon in Seattle. My very first KubeCon was in Seattle 2 years ago. I've been to 2 or 3 of the European ones now. The European ones are a ton of fun. This year was the first year we did KubeCon China. I did not go, but I heard amazing things. I think one of the things you just have to be aware of is a conference is localized. The content of a conference is going to be localized to what's important to that region. So if the technology in China is something that makes sense to you or something that you're using a lot, that might be an interesting conference to check out. But there is going to be some localization going on for each of the conferences as well. As far as US versus European, I would say like their value is a wash. They're the same, but you do see a slightly different localization based on what folks in the EU are doing versus what folks in the US are doing. So just be aware of that. But you're going to have a great time no matter which one you go to. So if you can get to any of them, make it a point to get out there. Oh, and it looks like somebody's typing in the HackMD. So this is cool because people can type real time. This would be a good place to show the stamp. Oh, okay. So George is reminding me before we get started. We actually have a really cool toy that we wanted to show today. So let's see if I can switch over to our dock camera. So George, can you give in the chat really quick a little bit of history about where this stamp came from and why we got it? But I'll just talk about my experience with the stamp today. So I'm sitting at my desk getting ready for TGIK, and all of a sudden Joe runs up to me with a big white box, and he's like, oh my gosh, you got to check this thing out that George ordered. So he opens it up and he pulls this thing out of the white box, and it's basically a rubber stamp. And we had these blue, Kubernetes blue ink pads with this rubber stamp. And then, of course, Joe, being the wonderful engineer that he is, engineered this really great stamp ink holder so that we can put the whole big giant rubber stamp onto both of the ink pads. And he glued that to one of the pieces he uses to make the Heptio container. So it's an official Heptio container ink holder thing. So anyway, we were playing with this earlier, and actually I tried to get one on my arm, which is super bruised, as you can see. But anyway, we're gonna do one real quick live because I just want folks to see how actually really awesome this stamp is. And I think it's gonna be at the Contributor Summit, so we can stamp various Kubernetes things and make them Kubernetes official for anyone who wants to play with the Kubernetes stamp. Okay, so George says, so the Kubernetes logo is in the main repo. It's an SVG file, so I just uploaded it to Stamp & Sons, and they made a stamp for us. We'll be using this to stamp swag bags at KubeCon. Okay, so if you want a swag bag stamp, or you want some fancy business papers stamped, or you just want your arm or your leg stamped, come see us at the Contributor Summit, or I'm assuming we'll also have it at the Heptio booth, and we can give you a big Kubernetes stamp. So without further ado, look how awesome that turned out. It's like the perfect shade of Kubernetes blue, and I think I can actually maybe do a better one where I don't go quite as hard. So let's see, get a little bit more ink on it. Make sure I get all of the rungs of the Kubernetes wheel that has 7 sides, and let's just try right here. There we go. That one actually looks a lot better because I didn't do it as hard. But anyway, if you want to come check out the Kubernetes stamp, this thing's pretty cool, and I just want to stamp everything now. And I'm wondering if we can put permanent ink on this and stamp t-shirts, or I don't know, the possibilities are kind of endless. So anyway, come check out the awesome Kubernetes stamp that George got for us. Good idea, George. Sin says, are you guys going to have the stamp at your booth? I'm assuming we are. I mean, this is kind of the first time we're talking about it, but yeah, why not, right? Saeed says, we should have KubeCon UK next year since we're not going to be part of the EU anymore. Yeah, Saeed, we can totally propose that to the CNCF and see what they think. I know a lot of these conferences are scheduled pretty far in advance, like up to a year or over a year sometimes, just because booking conference centers and things. And there's whole insurance policies that go into it. So like we should talk more if you're serious about getting involved and maybe starting another one. Or worst case scenario, we could definitely put together a Kubernetes themed conference and just kind of do it independently. So there's an option as well. But I'm sure a lot of folks here have ideas and would be interested in talking to you about that. And I can connect you with some of my friends in London and in the UK who have like started conferences from scratch and have gone a couple years and they're pretty successful now. So they might be able to help out and point you in the right direction as well. Waleed says, cool. Salmon says, best stamp I've seen in 2018. Heptio says, let's hope she doesn't use up all the ink. I just got my tattoo redone, so I'm already using up most of the ink everywhere. Okay, so let's go back and let's look at our HackMD, because we got a lot to go over and we haven't even started talking about CNAB and Duffel yet, which we'll get to, I promise. Okay, so let's do our week in review here. So first things first, Kubernetes 1.13 is out. I feel like it was just the other day on TGIK. I was like, wow, we just got to 1.13 code freeze, and wow, now we're releasing it. So George put this together. This is really cool. He referenced two really important things for the release. The first one is the official release notes. So these are relevant to you if you want to actually come and read every little detail along with the actual commit and the original author of the commit or pull request for each of these features. And this goes into great detail. So if you're really curious and want to get down into the nitty-gritty of what changed in this release, this is the ultimate source of truth. So this is a fantastic resource. But most folks are kind of more interested in a little bit higher layer. So that's where this Kubernetes.io blog release announcement comes in. And this kind of high levels everything and kind of puts it into perspective. So the first thing you want to notice here is simplified Kubernetes cluster management with kubeadmin in GA. We've been waiting for this for a long time. I know Tim and a lot of folks from SIG Cluster Lifecycle have been working on this, and kubeadmin is finally GA. And this opens the door to a ton of folks who have been wanting to adopt kubeadmin, but the GA barrier has prevented them from adopting kubeadmin. So big shout out, we finally made it. Good job, everyone. And we should totally send everybody who helped work on making this GA a Heptio swag bag or something to say thanks for it. The next one is the CSI interface is also now GA. So CSI is just basically a standardized way of working with and defining storage interfaces in Kubernetes. So very similar to CNI. If you remember, we did CNI TGIK episodes where we talked about all the different CNI providers, and we learned how there was a lot of different software that all sort of came in the same package, the same form, the same shape, and Kubernetes was able to interact with it. This is that same paradox, but with same paradigm, but with storage. So this is exciting as well that we're finally starting to standardize storage, because I know that's been confusing for a lot of folks along the way. Also, Core DNS is now replacing KubeDNS. KubeDNS has been it's been great. It's been there since I started working in Kubernetes. I know some folks have had some issues with it, and I think a lot of people are relieved that we're finally moving to Core DNS, as this is going to help ease over a lot of the DNS-related problems that we've been seeing in Kubernetes. So this is another exciting one as well. And then you can come down here and you can actually see there's some other features if you want to come and check them out. So congrats for folks on the 1.13 release. Okay, next place. Oh, so George put his here. This would be a good place to show the stamp. I actually did it before 1.13, but that's okay. Okay, so this next one is the CVE. So I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I definitely couldn't sleep the other night and spent about 3 hours digging through the API server source code and looking through all the different commits and actually understanding what was going on here and how this whole thing actually happened. So there's some really great articles out there that sort of high level it for folks, but I'm going to give you the real quick and dirty what happened and what does this mean for you. And I'm going to kind of go through and show you a little bit of the history here. So this is the announcement on the discuss.kubernetes.io that just mentioned the vulnerability. This person, Liggett, I want to say, I always know how to read their name, but I don't know how to pronounce it. So this person is the one who's kind of been driving it and has been answering most of the questions in the GitHub issue here, which we can see this tracking issue here. And so when I wanted to find out more about the CVE, this is definitely where I came and where I started. So if you notice the title here, it says proxy request handling and Kube API server can leave vulnerable TCP connections. And then you can see that this is actually linked to a critical CVE. And then there's some more information here about which versions are now patched and which versions you should upgrade to. So just real quick, if you're not running at least this version or greater on your Kubernetes cluster today, and your API server is reachable by other folks or by anyone inside the cluster, which it probably is, you probably should go and upgrade your cluster immediately because this is a fairly serious bug. And this is just affects the Kubernetes API server. And if you want to start doing a little bit of the history here, you can come through and you can read all this, but what I want to point out is where we changed the title, right here. So it says legit change the title from proxy connection gets stuck on error response. So this is the first thing you need to understand if you're going to understand how this vulnerability is exploited, which is basically if you send a specific type of response, which I'm not going to show you how to do that, but there is a tool that I'll show you in a second that can do that. If you send this, you can actually leave a proxy connection hanging, and then you can escalate through that existing connection, and you can route to the kubelet API server, which is this relatively undocumented API server. And the way that aggregated APIs work is it'll pull from the kubelet API server and put all of those together for you. So you're actually able to route to the kubelet API server, and you basically get root on the kubelet. So this can translate to remote code execution because if you can schedule a pod or even exec into a pod, you basically can do whatever you want. So Anastas says there's a good command allowing you to check if your setup is vulnerable or not in the issue. Okay, so there might be a command down here that somebody pasted. This is a pretty long issue here, so if you want to come and read it, you can. I got to about here the other day, and these are all new. Okay, we'll show you the tool that somebody built, and that can also help you as well. So anyway, if you get to the kubelet API server, you pretty much get root because it uses the API server's TLS to authenticate, and the API server is basically able to control and command the kubelet. So if you have those TLS creds, you're pretty much able to do whatever you want. So this is a relatively scary CVE. Fortunately, we had it fixed and patched relatively soon, and we have upgrade stories already available. So yeah, that's the TLDR on the CVE of earlier this week. I think we're going to talk about it a little bit at the panel next week that I'll be on. And then in general, if you want to talk about it more, feel free to come stop me or Joe. Joe is much more involved into the security side of things, so he can probably speak a little bit more to how this happened and what we should do architecturally moving forward to prevent things like this from happening. I just wanted to kind of explain it to folks so they got an idea of what actually is going on here. Anastas says affected configuration section has it. So let's see if we can grep for this. Affected configuration. Okay, so here is the command you can run to see, I think if it's exploitable or not. Let's see what this says. Like the metric servers that are directly accessible from the Kubernetes API servers network. Okay. So yeah, feel free to come through and check this out. And then this is just a natural segue into this test tool here, which you can run, and it'll actually give you like a yes/no, is your cluster vulnerable or not. Jordan links a one-liner kubectl command to show that the aggregated APIs are enabled to which part of the issue, although not all of it. Also, I think the anonymous auth flag has to be turned on the API server as well. So yeah, it's a pretty niche issue, but just being aware of like what could happen, and then using a tool like this to determine if your cluster is vulnerable or not. In any case, it's good practices to keep your clusters upgraded. So upgrading to the most recent version is a good idea, regardless of if you're vulnerable or not. Okay, so that's the CVE TLDR. Let's see what we got next. KubeDex's 90 days of production on EKS. Oh, cool. This looks like Pokemon. I don't know what this is, but I want to play Pokemon now. 90 days of AWS EKS in production. Oh, cool. So this is talking about the first 90 days of somebody's experience using Amazon's EKS in production. I spent a lot of time talking about EKS last week. I did 2 presentations at reInvent with my buddy Chris Hine, who works at AWS. I learned a lot about EKS Cuddle. I learned a lot about EKS and how they built and architected everything. So this would be a good read for a lot of folks I talked to last week at reInvent to come through and get the first 60 days deep dive into what it takes to get a Kubernetes cluster up and running. I know there was a lot of concerns about like, oh, how do I get my API server logs, or what happens, how do I turn the audit logs on, or does this integrate with CloudWatch? And so there was a lot of questions around the sort of user experience here, and I think this will probably highlight a lot of that for folks. So if you want to come and get a heads up on that, this is a good place to start. It looks like people are in the chat. Let's see what they're saying. Also, I'm going to nonchalantly drink out of my Heptio mug here. I guess I can lower this a little bit. There we go. While I read the chat. Sorry, I swallowed it the wrong way. Saeed says, does it affect hosted solutions like GKE? I don't know exactly how GKE has their cluster set up. I'm assuming the folks at GKE, considering a lot of the people who work on the API server and probably were hands-on with the PR as it came through, have already reacted to this. And GKE probably has a story and an upgrade path for folks. Also, one of the advantages of running managed Kubernetes is when things like this happens, your cluster kind of gets automatically upgraded for you behind the scenes. So I would look more into that, Saeed, if that's a concern for you. Let's see, Todd Lyon says, the site is only a couple of months old, but it has some really good blog articles. Okay. I think Todd is referring to this KubeDex site here. So even in general, I think if you want to come read about UKApps, come check it out. But it looks like there might even be like, oh, there's some like tutorials here, creating a DevOps resume, beginner's guide to Helm. Like, what are the top 10? Let's see what these are. Okay, so there's Kubernetes Ingress, Core DNS, Prometheus. Okay, so it looks like there's a lot of cool blog articles here. So this is just probably an overall good resource for folks. Okay, so that's KubeDex, or did I say that right? KubeDex? Yeah, KubeDexes. Okay, so this next one is a ton of fun, sorry. So Heptio Ark is our backup and recovery tool. And then this is like the, don't say anything, but there's a good chance we might be doing a TGIK live on Heptio Ark next week if sort of the cosmos are in alignment. So come see me or Joe if you're interested in learning more about Ark. We can do some demoing at the booth, and we'll have a lot of folks at TGIK, like Carlesia here, who work on the source code and can tell you more about Ark. But what's more important to that is this issue. In the engineering world, we all know that naming things is quite possibly the most difficult thing we ever do in our careers. And as Heptio is going through our acquisition into VMware, we have discovered that there is a different backup tool that VMware already has called Ark, spelt with a Q. So in order not to confuse Heptio Ark with VMware Ark, we decided that we want to rename Heptio Ark. I guess the two rules are here: it needs to be a proper English word, and it needs to be a nautical theme. And then also no constructive names only. Please no Bodie McBoatface, etc. Thank you. I tweeted about this. I know there's been some other tweets about it. If you have any ideas and you want to go into the pool, feel free to come and add your idea. There is already a ton of these, and I think somewhere in here, there's 62 more that GitHub will hide, and you can load all of those, and it's just a ton of people naming things. So in general, I was thinking about this earlier today. If you're just naming a tool in Kubernetes, there's actually probably some good ideas here. So this is probably a good naming thread just to bookmark in case you ever are writing a tool that you need a nautical themed name for, because there's a lot of exciting names here from a lot of different people around the industry. So this is fun, and if you have any ideas, feel free to come add them. Okay, last but not least, the Upbound folks announced Crossplane. So I love doing these. So George added this one. I've never looked at it before till now, so you're getting like the virgin eyes look at whatever this new thing is. Today we are introducing Crossplane, the open source multi-cloud control plane. I still don't know what it is. It exposes a workload and resource abstractions on top of existing managed services and enable a higher degree of workload portable across cloud providers. So yeah, this is a good example of like my engineering brain being like, okay, tell me what this is concretely, and I still don't know. It just seems like an abstraction that enables some sort of ease of functionality, and you can run it on top of Kubernetes, and it looks like there's some UIs and some client libraries and CI tools. And then I guess there's resource controllers that talk to the back end here, which the way I'm already kind of thinking about resource controllers in this diagram is like they're doing things like taking a CRD declared here and actually bringing that to life in some cloud in the background. Mohammed says, oh my god, Ark plus TGIK. Bob says version 1.13.0 pre-patched for CVE. Yes, Bob, I think all 1.13 anything is not vulnerable to the CVE, so you're good there. Sin says KubeFed. Okay, so this looks exciting. If it is what I think it is, let's see. With Crossplane, a developer writes a portable config, and it's generally not concerned about the cloud provider. So this is kind MySQL instance, name WordPress. Okay, so I see what's going on here. This is very similar to what we were doing in SIG, was it SIG cluster catalog? Something catalog. It's what some of my old homies at Microsoft and Deis were working on, which was basically writing a generalized abstraction for various commonly used services, and then you could sort of change the backend. So in this example, you would actually define this sort of ambiguous MySQL definition, and then regardless if you were running in AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, it would sort of bring to life their managed MySQL service behind the scenes for you, and we would do all that running on Kubernetes. So this is an exciting service abstraction is what it looks like. And I'm sure there's probably some service discovery baked in here if I had to guess. Okay, so that's cool if you want to come check that out. Sin says multi-cloud resource operator. So yeah, that's what I think. I think multi-cloud resource operator is another way of saying like an ambiguous service abstraction operator that brings these services up and manages them in different clouds. Okay, so let's see what we got going on here. So next we have reference links. Let's do KubeCon announcements, and then we'll jump into CNAB. Okay, so KubeCon announcements. There's this Heptio Gimbal plus Heptio Contour office hours. So just real quick, high level on both Gimbal and Contour. I think Joe's talked about these a lot on TGIK if you want to go watch Joe's episodes on them. But Gimbal is a more advanced management system that allows you to do some interesting multi-cluster things on top of Heptio Contour, which is an ingress controller built on the Envoy proxy, which our friends over at Lyft helped with the Envoy proxy, and we took advantage of that and wrote a really slick ingress controller called Heptio Contour. Big hats off to my homeboy Dave down under who did a lot of work there. So thanks for your hard work there, Dave. And so anyway, if you want to come do open office hours and talk more about the future of the project and the pipeline moving forward and get involved and understand it, feel free to join Octapio Yahoo Japan folks along with us at Heptio Thursday at 12:15 at our booth P8. So make sure you bookmark P8 because that's where TGIK Live is going to be at KubeCon next week. So here is the next one down. I'm going to skip mine because I'll brag about myself at the end. This is a really cool page. It's hello.heptio.com. And you can see here it's got our booth 8. And you can come see there's me on a mountain and Joe in front of some screen. And it just says, come join TGIK Live. And you can see our Kubernetes training. That's already sold out, by the way, so big round of applause to our training folks. And then here's all of our Heptonian sessions here if you want to come see what we got going on. There's a lot of exciting ones. So we're doing a SIG cluster lifecycle update with Robert Bailey and Tim, St. Clair. I've got 2 in here. Craig McLucky, our CEO, has one, so make sure you come and check his out. And Kate has a really cool one. And we've been sort of, the past couple of weeks at Heptio, we've been sort of test driving our presentations with each other. So I've seen a lot of these, and these are actually really solid presentations. So, so come check these out. So last but not least, if you want to come check mine out, I've been working on this talk for about a year now, and I actually haven't given it anywhere. So this will be the first time I've ever given this talk. And it's called You Can't Have a Cluster Bleep Without a Cluster. And it talks about the complexity levels of Kubernetes and how it's easy to sort of get caught up in some of that. And then talks about whether or not that's worth it along the way. I did a really solid interview yesterday morning, pretty early our time, but was able to talk to some of our friends over at Zalando about one of the incidents they got into using some really, really common Kubernetes patterns. So we're going to explore some real live user stories and talk about how easy it is to get caught up in some of this stuff and talk about really clever ways of getting yourself out of these sticky situations. So if you want to come learn more about refactoring and getting yourself out of a cluster bleep, for lack of a better term, this will be my talk that I'm giving next week at KubeCon as well. Okay, so we also have the Contributor Summit. So these sessions will be recorded and published to YouTube, and we'll post links to them as soon as we can. So the Contributor Summit is exciting. I think it's sold out, but you can sign up for it beforehand, and it's just an opportunity to come and hang out with folks like myself and Joe and all the contributors to Kubernetes and just have open discussions about kind of whatever you want and really hammer on the Kubernetes code base and really explore multiple options of moving the Kubernetes code and Kubernetes features forward. So that's a cool one as well that we get to do every KubeCon. So if you didn't get a chance to make it this year, make sure you sign up next year, because I guess these things are selling out now, which is exciting, especially when you go back to the first one, which was just like maybe 20 or 30 people sitting in a room hacking on Kubernetes for an afternoon. So these things are definitely growing. So excited to see folks at that one. Okay, so let's talk CNAB. And I'm going to like get a quick piece of chocolate before I get into this. And maybe some Diet Coke too. Because I already drank all my kombucha. Okay, first things first, we should talk about the CNAB spec. So earlier this week, we saw this big announcement from our friends at, I think it was Microsoft and Google and Terraform. Or, I'm sorry, Microsoft Docker and Terraform, not Google. Anyway, you can come here to the CNAB.io website. And this is actually kind of a walk down memory lane for me. Back when I worked at Deis, we had all of this very similar branding on a lot of our websites, and I got to kind of see it again this week, so that was exciting. But anyway, this talks about CNAB and kind of what it is. It's CNAB is cloud agnostic. It delivers apps. It's signed and secure. And then it talks about this tool Duffel, which we're going to learn more a little bit later. Yeah, so brought to you by Microsoft, Docker, friends at Bitnami, and our friends at HashiCorp. So it looks like all of these folks kind of contributed to this. So this is interesting. So what happened here is, looks like these folks got together and decided to come up with a new spec for defining app management. It's interesting to see the choice that they got together sort of on their own, built this, and then released it to the community. Instead of kind of the other way around, of getting folks involved firsthand like we do in Kubernetes upstream and kind of building it out. But it's really fleshed out, and you can come through and you can actually read the spec here. It gets pretty granular, defining everything. And I've seen a lot of tweets this week about like, okay, so what is CNAB? What does it mean to me? How do I make sense of it? And so I kind of want to help like bring a lot of this to life. So CNAB is a specification that defines how you could, if you choose to use it, begin to start packaging applications and doing this in a standardized way. So one of the phrases that really resonated with me is it's like we're still doing the same like basic tasks we've done the whole time. We're just now standardizing how we're actually going to go and perform some of these steps. So as you go through and you start reading the spec, you'll realize, let's actually start here and we can look at this. You'll actually go through and you can realize that these are things that you're doing, and it, just now with CNAB, you can actually start to standardize that, and so that you're doing it at the same time for every application, so you get some familiarity of how you're actually going to package your app. And then it also includes this whole PGP signing that's supposed to sort of give you a little bit of confidence, so long as you trust the person who signed the package that this package is actually an authentic package that you can go ahead and run. So CNAB is extremely generic, and I think that's part of the design behind it, is that you can do anything with it. It doesn't matter what cloud you're running on. It doesn't matter what type of program you're using for it. It's sort of just this like a generic way of performing these same steps that you do with a lot of application installation tools. So we're going to do I'm not going to go through the whole spec here, but I'm just going to kind of read the important parts to kind of get folks thinking in the right direction here. So let's start with Chapter 1, the Cloud Native Application Bundle Core. So the summary section is actually pretty good. So it's a packaging format for a broad range of distributed applications. So here we're seeing broad range of distributed applications. Again, this thing is supposed to be super generic, so you can kind of use it anywhere. DevOps says, anyone leveraging this for bare metal K8s deploys? DevOps, or DevOps E, I guess would be how you pronounce your name. What is this? The word this in your question there. Anybody leveraging what for bare metal? Are you talking about CNAB or are you talking about something else? So the bundle definition is a single file that contains the following information. Okay, so a bundle sort of maps to a single application or a single package. So we're actually going to go through and make a bundle in a second, and we're going to have like a hello world application that's actually just going to like echo some font out to our terminal, and that's going to sort of be analogous to starting an application. And all of that is defined in this thing called a bundle.json. And we'll actually look at what a bundle.json looks like here in a second. And then it goes through and it talks about how you can sign and have unsigned bundles, which we'll look at that when we start running it. And it talks about thick and thin bundles, which I didn't really understand these off the cuff, but I think it's just the difference between how much stuff goes into one of these bundles. So then it talks about the approach and some key terms that you need to know. And again, already there's a lot that you're needing to learn in order to kind of grok what a bundle is. But there's a bundle.json, there's also a bundle.cnab, and all of these are just basic meta information. So it just describes things that are going to be relevant to your package. We sort of saw like a very similar pattern when we saw Helm. There was like a values.yaml that would allow you to define things like the maintainer, the maintainer's email address, or perhaps like a unique version number or version string. So we're seeing a lot of that same pattern here in the CNAB definition as well. And then I guess as we move forward, there's going to be this tool called Duffel. And Duffel is one possible implementation of the CNAB spec. So in the same way that like Flannel implements CNI for Kubernetes networking, Duffel implements CNAB for package management. So as you're thinking all this, as we're going through CNAB, as you're thinking about all this, just remind yourself we're going to look at Duffel, which is going to do a lot of this stuff concretely here in a moment. So right now this is kind of hand-wavy and kind of vague because we're just defining sort of this spec of what we're talking about here. Okay, so we can go through and we can actually look up all of these different bundles and look up the spec, and we can learn about all the different files. We're going to probably understand that a lot easier by seeing it hands-on instead of actually reading about it, so we're going to skip past this for now. I really want to go over the bundle.json and the invocation image, and then we can look at signing and provenance as well, and we'll get hands-on with it here in a second. Okay, so actually let's go to the bundle.json first. Okay, so the bundle.json file, here is an example of it. So you can see here we have a schema version, we can give it a name, we have a version number, there's this arbitrary description, we have a list of maintainer objects with name, email, and URL. And then this is sort of the most important element of the bundle.json here, to quote my friend Michelle. Oh, speaking of, big shout out to Michelle Norelli and Ralph Squilacci for helping me out yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before. They jumped on the phone with me and kind of gave me like the 411 on CNAB and Duffel and talked about where it all came from. And a lot of what I'm saying today is sort of regurgitated from that conversation, mixed in with my own opinions, mixed in with some inferences I'm making after working. I used to work with these folks back when we were Deus, so I kind of like remember a lot of the talk around Helm and sort of the ideas that were floating around the office then, and I'm seeing some of that brought to life here. So it's kind of like a hybrid of all three of those inputs coming out in TGIK right now. So anyway, invocation images, this is where you actually go and you define a specific container image that you want to run. It's called an invocation image because this is a thing that starts a thing. Literally, it's some layer of software running in a container that's responsible for doing something else. And that's pretty much all we're doing with CNAB in these invocation images. If you notice here, we actually have a list of images. So we could actually copy this, and we could like add a different image below it. And I think we're still hammering out the details on how that's going to be executed linearly, and what happens if one of these invocation images fails or exits non-zero along the way. So being aware that like we do define a lot of flexibility here, and with a lot of the flexibility and in the complexity comes a lot of an opportunity for things to kind of like make a lot of assumptions and might be a little bit confusing along the way. So just be aware that most of the examples today are using one invocation image, and you can actually come through and define the image type as well. So Docker, as we learned when we did our TGIK on Canico, does implement the OCI spec, but there are some subtle differences so that if you want to actually run this thing with Docker, you have to treat the container image just slightly differently than you would with like a proper OCI, open container. What does I in OCI stand for? Open container something. Let's look this up. Open Containers Initiative. So you would have to treat it just a little bit differently if it's Docker. And so I think that's what's going on here with this image type. And then you can come down here and you can define images as well. And I think the big difference between these two is, actually, to be honest, I don't know the difference between these two. Let's go see if we can find it up here. A list of images included within any bundle as an array, a specification of which parameters may be overwritten, a top-level package. Okay, so that's my first question, is what's the difference between this image and invocation images? All of the examples I've played with so far only use invocation images, and then it looks like images here are slightly more complex. and this one's calling microservice, but this one's calling hello world. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if we can figure it out a little bit later. And if anybody from the Microsoft team is with us, feel free to jump in and help us out. And then you can come down here and you can define some credentials as well. So already, as you're looking at this bundle.json, you're starting to say to yourself, okay, these are all things that I would concern myself with if I needed to give my application to somebody else to run. If I had a small web service running on my my local computer and I needed to go like package this up and give it to a friend down the street, some of the things that I would need to concern myself with would be like, does this thing come with credentials? And if so, how do I safely transport those? Or like, how do I define which OCI compliant image do I want to actually use to bring my thing to life and actually bootstrap my my application? And then I can include some of this meta information as well for good measure in case anything goes wrong and they need to track me down later. So we're starting to see how this is really just an abstraction for commonly used things and avenues in which we would run an application, locally or in different scenarios. So this is like going up above a layer on top of like the normal Kubernetes way of running and installing an application. Okay, so here we have a thick bundle. What's the difference between thick and thin? And here's how a thick bundle looks. Notice the invocation and images fields reference the underlying Docker image manifest. Andre says, what's the difference, or what's the overlap between CNAB and Helm? Andre, we're going to look at how CNAB can install a Helm chart here in a little bit. And kind of CNAB can pretty much do anything here in a little bit as well. Anyway, so there's thick and thin, and I guess the invocation image and images fields reference the underlying Docker manifest. So we're actually going to look at building one of these and kind of what it looks like. Okay. I still want to figure out, okay, so here's invocation images, and here's images. This is what we want to read to figure out the difference here. Okay, the invocation images sections describe the images that contains bootstrapping for the image. Okay, so this is like a bootstrapping thing, which I think is, the intention here is to run some software that brings other software up. So this, Andre, this kind of is like alluding to your Helm question, like an invocation image could be an image that simply runs like a Helm install or a kubectl apply -f. This is just something that sort of starts something else. The image list, let's see here, the bundle.json maps image metadata, name, origin tab to placeholders within the bundle. This allows images to be renamed, relabeled, or replaced during the CNAB bundle build operation. Okay, so I think this is just an arbitrary way of like including other images into our build so that we can reference them along the way. So this is like, I can kind of thinking of this as like the vendor directory in Go, but for container images. So we can start to like define other images that are going to be relevant to our bundle and install them. So I'm imagining here, let me actually like draw this out really quick because this is getting kind of complex. Where's my doc cam? Okay, so let's move to stamp. And we'll use a pen. So I think what the logic here would be like, let's say we have, here's image 1, and then we have images 2 and 3. And this is going to be our invocation image. And this is going to be just our image list here. And let's say, I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, yeah, let's say we were deploying some sort of controller to Kubernetes. The invocation image could be a very small container that maybe it is a, all it is a simple bin bash script running inside of, let's just say it's running inside an Alpine container. And then this bin bash script could then do like a Docker run. It could do a kubectl apply. It could do a Helm install. It could do a KSonnet install, or I guess that would just be KS. It could do a lot of things, and this is sort of arbitrary. So as flexible as a programming language of your choices is as flexible as this invocation image could be. So these other two images could then be referenced from this first invocation image, and like maybe the second one here is a controller that would go and actually set up like the namespace. And that could set up namespaces. Maybe that could write like a config map that is like populated dynamically somehow. It could do a lot of different just arbitrary things in a Kubernetes cluster. And then this would actually be like the controller itself. So this would be like the deployment that actually reads and runs based on this previous one. So I guess this would also have CRDs as well if we were doing the CRD controller model here. So this is an example of how we would use an invocation image to like first configure our cluster and then come in and actually like run a controller. So again, you see how just arbitrary this thing is. It's like super generic. Like anything you can do in a bash script or a Go script or a Ruby script or a Python script, you can do in this invocation image. And then really all CNAB does is it just says, if you want to run this thing, you just use this other tool to run it. And that's how it's going to run it. So anyway, that's sort of what is going on here with, let's go back to this view here. That's what's going on here with images and invocation images. So hopefully that sort of clarifies the two for a lot of people. And then I think we have parameters here, which again, this is another abstraction for arbitrary configuration, where you can go and you can sort of inject key value pairs into different parts of your bundle.json. I'm assuming this sort of behaves similarly to Helm, where we have our values.yaml file, where you can define values that are interpolated, sort of like, I don't want to say, it's like the opposite of an abstract inheritance in like Java or PHP or object-oriented programming language, where you take this higher level sort of like base construct, and then if like we find those key values anywhere else, it'll like interpolate them accordingly. So I think that's what's going on here with parameters, but we'll keep that in mind as we move forward. And I think that's probably a good starting place. Oh, let's go into credentials. So again, this is where we're starting to cross into the security territory, the security realm of things. CNAB actually gives us an opportunity to bundle credentials up into our packages. So this is good and bad. It's good because you can come in and you can sort of make things easier for folks, and you can have credentials embedded into your bundle as you go and use CNAB or a tool like Duffel to install it. But also anytime we have credentials hidden anywhere, there's a concern of those credentials getting leaked somehow. So, you know, we talked about this when we did Vault, about using dynamic credentials and how we can pull things arbitrarily, and they're created at runtime when we need them and destroyed immediately afterwards. So looking at a credential path like that might also be an option for folks as well. But I think with CNAB, we can embed these if that makes sense for our use case. Also, custom actions. So we'll get into this when we look at run a little bit later, but you are able to sort of implement even more arbitrary logic other than the built-in CNAB steps along the way for managing your application. So there's a good example we're going to look at later, but I think you can basically define any action you want. So we could have, like right now, we have by default CNAB supports install, upgrade, and uninstall, but we could have like, we could do like a Duffel or any CNAB tool. We could do Duffel run check. And maybe check is this arbitrary action that only makes sense for this one specific package, and all check does is just like make sure the file system has all the dependencies in place. Or we could do any sort of arbitrary action we wanted to there, and so you can really extend and expand the scope of what CNAB can do. So again, super generic. We're just solving the same problems we did with package management before. We're just doing it in a standardized way now. So that's kind of handy. Okay, so let's go back up a layer. We're getting kind of off into the spec here, but if you want to come through and read more about all of the different spec files and signing and exactly how all that works, I encourage you to come read this if CNAB looks like something that makes sense for you and your team, especially the bit around signing and provenance. We can look at this for a second, but if we went through the whole spec, we would spend the entire TGIK just going through the spec. But this talks about how every image and invocation image field in the bundle JSON must have a digest field, which basically means that it contains a unique digest for the image. So that sort of handles this sort of making sure that the image is authentic and it's the one that we want to run. And then it talks about how we will actually go and create a digest of an object, and then I think we sign it. Yeah, we do a PGP sign here. So you can go and read about the PGP standards and how they work. PGP is pretty straightforward. It's been around since I've been using Unix, and basically the way it works is you encrypt something, and then based on a number of different keys that you could or couldn't share, you can unencrypt it on the other end as well. So it's one of those things that is like as strong as you make it, and as strong as many people know about it and use it. So that's sort of like the beauty and simplicity, but also a little bit of the concern around PGP as well. Okay, so every one of our packages is going to get signed and it's going to get a PGP signature attached to it, as we see here. And you'll see that this is the actual like bundles.json, and then it's delimited by a new line, and we actually get our PGP signature, which we're going to look at when we create our first bundle. So let's do this. Let's run the hello world just to get a feel for the user experience with Duffel. And then we will actually go and create our first bundle. And then we'll look at creating an action on top of that and sort of talking about the whole time how we could potentially be using this to run something in Kubernetes. Okay, so let's go and let's check out. So this is Deis Labs, which I think is a new org. I think the old one just used to be just Deis. But in here we have a couple of different repositories. We've been looking at this one, this CNAB spec, but now we want to go and we want to check out Duffel. And then also you might want to just quick note, there's this bundles repository here, which this is like the new charts repository. These are all of the bundles that already exist that allow you to do things with CNAB. Like here's one for AKS, so you could actually go and set up an Azure Kubernetes service Kubernetes cluster using Duffel, which is great, and I think might be more convenient for some folks based off of some of the other tools that are out there today. So you can come in and you can check a lot of this stuff out. And we're going to look at one of these later when we do a run. So anyway, here's Duffel. And you can go and you can see there's a duffel.sh, just like there's a helm.sh, and it's got the same like Deis branding that makes me so happy from way back when I lived in Boulder. And so you can see that Duffel is brought to you by Microsoft and Docker. And you can get Duffel, and it just talks about it's a simple command line tool that interacts with CNAB. So yeah, again, the whole point here is that Duffel is just a reference implementation. We can learn from it, we can use it, but if you want to come write your own implementation for whatever reason, you certainly can. So you could write that in any programming language of your choice. It's just an implementation of a spec, and the spec is that spec we just looked at. So let's talk about getting Duffel installed on your system. So there's two ways of doing this. So Waleed says, I might use Duffel to install a Helm chart that installs an operator. Yes, Waleed, I think that's one of the, you can actually see some examples like that in the bundles repository I just showed you, where you're actually seeing that you could use Duffel to implement CNAB to install a Helm chart that then would install an operator. That would be a workflow that you would see here. So that's a good way of thinking about it. Okay, so Duffel, well, it says the CNAB installer, but I think it's supposed to be just like a reference implementation. So actually, before we start, let's go in and let's download Duffel. So we have 4 releases. You can see here we have binaries if you want to go ahead and just download the binary. When I first did this, I grabbed the Duffel Darwin AMD 64 one, but then I noticed there was a few things in the Duffel source code I had to tweak really quick. So I opened up some PRs, and thanks to Bacon Gobbler and Michelle for merging it. I miss you guys, Matt. I miss you a lot. It would be great to catch up with both of you too at KubeCon. Bacon Gobbler, if you want to go gobble up some bacon. I'm currently eating meat, and I'm on a big bacon kick, so I'm down to go get some BLTs or whatever. So anyway, if you want to come and you want to run the binaries as they are here, go for it. But if you want to follow along, you're probably going to want to build from master, because a lot of these changes went through today or yesterday. That's going to allow you to do exactly what I'm doing here on the screen. So how we do that is we're going to go into my Go path. We're going to go into source, github.com, Deis Labs, Duffel. And I think it's it's make bootstrap build is what we want to run in order to actually compile a Duffel binary. So if you notice here, we should have this bin directory, and we're going to go ahead and, oh, hold on, Heptio. This is George. I need to EOD. Please feel free to continue to submit notes and links. If you see me at KubeCon, mention you're a TGIK listener, and I'll have a TGIK sticker for you. Okay, so actually this reminds me, George, we're going to do a raffle giveaway today. So before we get into compiling Duffel, let's go ahead and do like our TGIK like big raffle sweepstakes, crazy diamond, platinum, gold, whatever, giveaway for the week. I feel like we need like the gong back here again or something, like we need like some sort of like crazy lights, like can we like flash lights on or off, or I don't know how this works. But yeah, anyway, so the secret word this week, if you go to the HackMD, I'll tell you the secret word, but I'm going to make you wait for it. Up at the top of the HackMD, there's this link here. It's j.heptio.hept.io TGIK roll call. You can open this up. Just got 404 because I added a bracket to the end. You can open this up and you can actually submit, and you can submit to win TGIK swag. I don't know if it's first come first serve or if it's totally random, but if you want to do this, now's the time, and we'll send you off. You can actually you can put a note in here, I think. Oh no, you can pick, I agree to receive additional communication from Heptio. If you want anything specific, like if you want a signed copy of my book or anything, if you win, feel free to email me and I can do my best to make sure that happens. But the secret word for this week, I'm not even going to say it, I'm going to write it down. I feel like we need sound effects here. The secret word for this week Okay, so that's the secret word. And if you want to enter to win the Heptio sweepstakes, you totally can. And we will send, I keep getting my hotkeys off, and we will send some swag your way. Okay, so there's that giveaway as well. Let's go back to my Unix terminal here, where everybody wants to be. So we have this bin directory, which is where this will get compiled to, and we can run make bootstrap build. Actually, let's do this first. Git status. You can see we're on branch master, and I can do git pull upstream master, and hopefully there hasn't been any changes. Yeah, there hasn't been any changes, so now I can do my make bootstrap build, and this is going to get me a brand new Duffel binary here in my MacBook. I've already ran this, so this is going pretty quick, but the first time you run it, you're actually going to have to check out a bunch of code and the dependencies and get everything hammered out. This worked for me the first time, so that was really exciting, and now here in Ben, we can run Duffel, and you can see we're at our Duffel command line here. And even more so is I can move Ben Duffel into user local Ben Duffel, and then I can go to my home directory and actually just run Duffel, and there it is. And so now let's go back to TGIK. Whoa, okay, so I go fast in my Unix terminal. Basically all that happened was I moved the Duffel binary into user local Ben, and then I have this TGIK alias that puts me into my go source github.com Heptio TGIK path. So anyway, I'm here in TGIK. I'm in episode 59, which is our TGIK repo we use every episode, which can be found at heptio.com/TGIK, or I'm sorry, what am I doing? github.com/heptio/TGIK. There it is. So we will upload all of the code we're about to write together to this repo in this episodes directory, and we create one for every episode. We're on episode 59, so you'll see that one coming soon as we finish our episode here. Okay, so we're here in directory 59. We shouldn't have anything in here except for this empty notes file that I just have here in case we need to write anything down. George says, another George here from Melbourne having breakfast. Good to see you, other George from Melbourne. And let's go ahead and let's do the Duffel examples. So I want to actually go back, go source github.com, Deis Labs, Duffel, and we can go in and we can pull up Deis Labs Duffel, and we can go through and we can actually see in this README here this great example of how to do like a hello world with Duffel. So we'll do this first. Okay, so we just did our make bootstrap build, and we got our Duffel binary and user local Ben. And it says cd ben, and you can do Duffel init, and it'll actually go through and init everything for you, but we can just do this now. We can just do Duffel init. Okay, so first thing I noticed, and I've already done this before, so I kind of have already like sanity checked a lot of this, but the first thing we notice is it's created this directory in my home directory, hidden directory Duffel, and we've put bundles, logs, plugins, claims, and credentials. They're all stored in my home directory, which I keep the majority of my home directory in a private Git repository. So this will be a new addition to that as we move forward if I choose to keep using Duffel. So just a heads up that it's going to write stuff to your home dir. And let's go ahead and let's now do this Duffel build. And actually, you do see like a Duffel init. This is very similar to how Helm does things. It'll cache local information in your home dir as well, and that makes it somewhat convenient for folks. Anyway, we can do a build and install your first bundle. So to build our first bundle, which I guess it's important to call out the two big steps in Duffel, and this is CNAB because Duffel implements CNAB. First you build your package, and then after your package is built, you install it. And after it's been installed, that's basically the same thing as a run, which is a bit confusing because there's a run command, which we're going to talk about that later. But all you need to know is when we do finally get to this Duffel install down here, this is actually how we're going to actually run our invocation image. Okay, so Duffel build examples, hello world, and I'm doing this inside of the Duffel repository. So I'll do this, Duffel build. Again, if you aren't running from master, there's a chance you might get an error here. Basically, all we had to do was add this line to the Docker file, which is run apk update, which would make sure that our Docker image was up to date and that we were able to do this add -u bash without getting any indice errors. So anyway, you should get this successfully built bundle hello world, and you'll notice that this follows an OCI compliant naming standard here, which is the name of our container image, and then a tag, which Duffel defaults to the simver 0.1.0. Okay, so we've built our first hello world bundle, and now we can actually go and we can do a Duffel bundle list. And this list is going to look super familiar. One second, I'm like reorganizing my taskbar down here. This list is going to look super familiar to anybody who's ever used Helm or Docker or kubectl or any of the sort of list functions in our Go command line ecosystem that we're all familiar with. So Duffel bundle list. Okay, so you can see, yeah, all caps, like this line here is really what gives it away. So you can see we have Hello World and we have TGIK app. Both of these are me kind of goofing off earlier. So we're going to make another one. We'll call it like TGIK Live or something. And we'll add a different bundle to our sort of list here. And here's that digest that we talked about earlier, which is this unique digest of this bundle so that we know it's authentic. And then you can also see if it's PGP signed or not along the way. OK, so those are our bundles that we have today. So now we can do this Duffel credentials generate, and this is actually going to put together, like, it's going to generate some creds for us to use within inside of our Hello World application. So this is an example of how we can actually generate and store credentials in our Duffel bundle that we could then ship later. And later we're going to talk about some of the other cool things you can do with Duffel and CNAB. Or I think it's just Duffel only. I don't know if this is in the CNAB spec, but you can like export it, like basically think of it like tarring something up, and you can stick that on a thumb drive. So that's kind of exciting as well. So anyway, Duffel credentials generate. We're going to go ahead and run this. First bit of feedback, this doesn't tell me anything, so I have no idea what just happened. I think if we go into our Duffel directory here, you can see that we have credentials in here, and now you can see we have hello world-creds.yaml. Let's go ahead and cat that out to the screen, and you can see that it's just created this empty credentials file. Regardless, probably important to tell people that we're storing credentials in their home directory, just so that there's some awareness of where those are living on their file system. So anyway, we've created this credentials here, and let's go back to our Duffel repository, and let's move on with our little example here. So next we can do this Duffel install hello world demo. So if we actually, let's do a Duffel install help before we do anything else. So Duffel install -h help. So this is super verbose, which is really convenient, really handy. Thank you for this. And it says it installs a CNAB bundle. This installs a CNAB bundle with a specific installation name. Once the install is complete, this bundle can be referenced by the install name. So here you see this example, and we're pretty much going to mirror this one. But in the example, they gave us -c. Let's go ahead and see what that -c does. Okay, so this is where we pass in our credentials, and it says specify the creds to use inside of the CNAB bundle. This can be a credential list, name, or a path to a file. So I think in this case, we're going to use the name of that credential YAML file we just looked at, which is like it gives it like an arbitrary name in the cache somewhere, and that's how you're going to get that credential name there. One second, espresso time. Also, if I'm talking really fast, I'm sorry. I haven't had caffeine all week. This is my first caffeine all week. I decided to just get really espressoed out for TGIK. So I hope that's okay with folks. So anyway, let's clear our screen, and let's go ahead and run, oh, not -- credentials. Let's run this command from our README here. Let's copy pasta this thing again. Okay, cool. Duffel install hello world. We give it a name, and it says executing install action hello world, install action, action install complete for hello world demo. Mohammed, hello Kris Nova. What's the difference between Helm and Duffel? Thanks. So Duffel is an abstraction that can run Helm or literally anything else. So you can use Duffel, like basically like a makefile or like a shell script or something to wrap it up. You're just running everything in a standardized way, and it gives you an abstraction for like packaging credentials and signing it along the way. So yeah, Duffel is just like the first step in running an application. Okay, so anyway, it says action install complete for hello world. So let's go and see what actually just happened here. So if we go into our example here, and if we go into hello world, we can see, wait, where am I? Okay, go into examples, then go into hello world, and then here's where we start to get our first glimpse into where Duffel and CNAB sort of fit together. Okay, so first you'll notice we have a duffel.json, which if we cut that out, this is all of the Duffel meta layer that describes the underlying abstraction that is CNAB. So this duffel.json is only relevant if you choose to use Duffel for your CNAB implementation. And then if we look in here, we have a CNAB directory. So we go into that directory, we can see that we now have app and Dockerfile. So the CNAB spec actually starts here. Everything above this in that higher level directory is just yet another abstraction on top of our already abstracted CNAB spec implementation here. So here, if we look at our Docker file, we can cat out our Docker file. Suresh says, I think Duffel is similar to Ansible Playbook Bundle. OpenShift folks are working on it to deploy application in the K8s or OpenShift. Good observation there, Suresh. Okay, so here we have a very simple Alpine latest Docker file. This is the magic line you need to add if your hello world isn't working. You need to add this run APK update line. And you can see all it does is it just copies the Docker file and it copies the app and it just says just go ahead and execute run. So if we look at app, if we go into app, you can see we have this run file. And you could have like any number of files in here. Like you could do a bash file, you could do a Ruby file, you could have a Go file, like doesn't matter. We'll just do sh for the sake of simplicity. And then as we actually look at run, we could include these other files or run them or execute them accordingly. So this is where the invocation part of the whole thing starts. This is the run is uses its shebang line to execute itself if it's an interpreted language. Otherwise, we just assume run is an executable binary somehow, like a statically linked binary, like something you would get from Go. And then that's going to go ahead and invoke whatever software we're trying to install with Duffel and CNAB. So anyway, if we look at run, by default, we're going to notice that it is a shell script. So the reason that we can call it run without run.sh without a file extension at the end is because of this first line here, which is called the shebang line. And the way that Unix works is it's going to use this first line to interpret this file using not bash, but actually shell. That's what this sh is right here. And you could actually do, like, you'll see some people will do like bin Python, and then you could write a Python file here. You could do bin Ruby or wherever the Ruby executable is on your file system. And then that will tell Unix to interpret it accordingly. So that's how Duffel is able to just execute this arbitrary file called run. So anyway, we could turn on expert mode if we wanted to here. I like to say set-eo pipefail is shell script on expert mode, but we'll keep that turned off for now. Basically, all that's going to do is it's going to exit if anything goes wrong instead of just throwing an error. So here's where this is like where the rubber meets the road for Duffel and CNAB. So how CNAB works is it passes in this action environmental variable here called CNAB action. And remember earlier we looked at it could either be install, upgrade, or uninstall. So those are the three things we have to concern ourselves with. And then if you look here in this bash script, we take the CNAB action, which is passed in as an environmental variable, and then we do a switch on it. So in bash, a switch is executed using this case statement, and then it can either be install, uninstall, upgrade, downgrade, or this is default. Here. And so if we run install, remember we did a Duffel install earlier, what Duffel's going to do, and this is like the magic here, is Duffel's going to set CNAB action equal to install, and then do a shell exec and exec whatever is in run. So basically, we're just wrapping up command line injection with a bunch of arbitrary rules. And those rules are basically, we're going to set CNAB action, and then we're going to just hope that your program has this like action associated with it and will respond differently based on whatever we set this environmental variable to. Also notice we can get various parameters in here that we can use to change the behavior of our script or our program. And we also get the CNAB installation name passed in if we want to use that as well. So really what we're seeing here is all CNAB is doing is just standardizing a way of basically wrapping up arbitrary install logic here. So this is, instead of a bin.sh file, this could be a make file. This could be a Ruby file. This could be a Python file. As long as that file responded to this variable, it could be anything. So really, all we're doing is we're just standardizing like the way I usually think about a make file. And that's what we're doing with Duffel and bundle. Or I'm sorry, with Duffel and CNAB. OK, so anyway, we see it echoed install action here. And if we close this, and we're not going to save it, you can see here, if we scroll up, where did it go? Did I lose my Duffel install? Nope, here it is, install action right here. So this is that bash script running inside of a container that echoed install action. And that install action, so this is where like, this is how generic this thing is. You can literally do anything with it. If it's a shell script, you could do a Helm install. You could do a kubectl install. You could do, you could start a Java program. You could zip up a file. You could like download all your Kubernetes secrets and ship them off somewhere. You could do literally anything you wanted. So that's sort of what Duffel and CNAB are going to let us do. So in this case, all we did was just echo out an arbitrary string. OK, so let's write a bundle. OK, so we'll go here, and we'll go back to our hackmd. And we're actually going to write a bundle, and we'll stick this in the TGIK repo once we get done. So here, I added a link for it somewhere. Reference links, here you go. Build your first CNAB bundle. So if you want to go, this is actually a really great piece of documentation that's going to allow you to create your first CNAB bundle. So we're going to go through this together, and we're going to do this in the TGIK repo. So we'll do my TGIK alias. We'll go to episodes 059. And here we're going to start going through our walkthrough here. So it says Duffel create hello world. So we'll copy this. Actually, we don't need to copy that. We can just type it. Duffel create, let's do TGIK live. Duffel create TGIK live. And you'll see here, now we have this TGIK live directory. And if we tree this out, you can see we now have our Duffel JSON that's relevant to Duffel. And then we have all of our CNAB implementation-y stuff down here in with a Docker file, the app directory, and a run directory. And of course, if we want to cat out CNAB, cat TGIK live, CNAB app run, you can see here it's a very simple shell script, very similar to the last one we just looked at in the hello world. And here we have install and uninstall. So actually, I think according to the spec, this is not a valid CNAB implementation. I think the spec says it must like all capital must. That's like a keyword in the spec, and it defines like may and must, and it sort of talks about what all those things mean. I think it must implement upgrade as well. So if somebody wants to quote me on that and keep me honest, feel free to drop a link in the chat or leave a comment on the YouTube video after this is done. But I think that's what the spec says. So anyway, so we have action equals install and action equals uninstall. And then we have like, hey, I'm installing things, and hey, I'm uninstalling things, and that's all it does. OK, so we've got our like scaffolding of our first bundle here. So now let's go and let's, oh yeah, and see this is, it just did this naturally for us as well. I do love all of the engineers over at my old Deus squad. I feel like a lot of us think a lot the same. So anyway, they went ahead and suggested just to go ahead and cat that out so you can get a familiarity with it as well. OK, so for this example, we're going to modify the run file to act on environmental variables that have been set by the CNAB runtime. OK, so it says, let's go ahead and let's like copy this hello world into our run. OK, so yeah, basically what's happening here is we're creating arbitrary actions. So status is not part of the CNAB spec. But we can create a run action for it so that we can do Duffel run status, And then that's actually going to execute this little code block here. And the word status can be any word that we want, any word that's meaningful to us in our application. So let's just go ahead and copy this, and we're going to echo this into our run file here. So let's go back to our Emacs command. I think I'm still in the run directory, right? No, I'm not. So where are we? Change directory TGIK live, CNAB app, Emacs run, and we'll go ahead and just paste this thing in. Sorry, I have a ton of add-ons with my Emacs, so it takes forever to open. Okay, so there we are. We'll save this, we'll exit out of here, and let's go up 1, 2, 3 directories. Okay, so we're back here in the root of the TGIK 059, 059 directory. Okay, and then here it talks about the CNAB action environmental variable, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And then it talks about defining the invocation image. So remember earlier when we looked at the hand-draw diagram that I did, this is where the invocation image comes into play. And the invocation image is actually going to be this Docker file that Duffel just created for us. And that's just going to basically execute run here. And again, you can see how flexible this is because you can actually come and change your Docker file just like you could change any Docker file to do whatever you want. This just sort of by default standardizes that it's going to be this file or executable called run. And that's what you should always do when you want to execute a container. So basically all it's doing is just standardizing how it's offering an opinion of best practices for how you would run a program inside of a container. And in this case, it's just saying we're going to do that by executing this file or this binary called run. Okay, so we can see that concretely in our terminal here by catting out TGIK live, CNAB, Docker file. And you can see here, again, make sure you have this run APK update. I just PR'd this earlier today, so if you're running an older version of Duffel, you're going to have a bad time. So just make sure that's in your Docker file, or you can just paste it in your Docker file. It's fine too. So anyway, it says, let's go ahead and let's build the bundle. And remember, there's 2 steps in getting your package running with Duffel and with CNAB. First we build, then we install. So to build, we do Duffel build. And in this case, I'm not going to do the dot because I'm actually going to go a layer above. So we are here in 059, so I'm going to do Duffel build, and then I'm going to actually pass in the folder that I want it to build. And that way I could have multiple packages here in my 059 example folder if I wanted to. Okay, so we're going to do Duffel build. And you can see all it does is basically just wrapping a Docker build. This is super familiar if you've ever seen Docker. And you can see it runs everything in our Docker file. It does an Alpine latest, run APK build, copies the Docker file, and then it copies CNAB app, the whole directory, into our container. And then it basically tells it by default, run this run executable or this run file again. And then at the very end, it says successfully built bundle TGIK live. So we get a little bit of friendly output here. And I think this is Duffel output, and this is the Docker build library output. So you can see the arrow here is a little bit different than the arrow here. So you can see how there's the 2 different bits inside of the Go program are interacting with each other. And bits would probably be a bad word to use there, but you guys see what I mean. Okay, so next we have Duffel show hello world. And then you got to make sure you add this -r as well, or you're not going to see your PGP signature here. So when we built it, we actually generated a PGP signature for it behind the scenes, and we can see that now by running this Duffel show command. So to run our Duffel show command, we're actually going to run, this is the name and the tag of our image that we're going to run. So Duffel show TGIK live 0.1.0. Okay, so this is running it without the -r, and then you want to run it with the -r, and then you're going to get the line delimited PGP signature here at the end to verify that this is in fact PGP signed. Meaning that this right now live on TGIK, when I did my Duffel build, this is a unique PGP signature for this build that we can authenticate against later if needed to verify that yes, in fact, you're running the same Duffel build that I was running here live on TGIK that I created. So that's one of the value adds of CNAB and of Duffel. Okay, so now we can watch it work. So we can actually do a Duffel install, and you can see that it runs a hello world. And then here we have our install action again. So this is where I got a little bit confused earlier, because naturally you say, oh, cool, I was able to run my install action. I want to run that again. So my first thought was that I would do a Duffel run, but that's actually not what Duffel run is used for. I think the mentality here was you do an install and that invokes an image that installs something. And once it's been installed, it's sort of this ephemeral one-time installation case, and you should never have to reinstall it again. And if you do, you should give it a different name. And Duffel run is actually how you would run these arbitrary actions like status and like check that we've been talking about earlier in the episode. So to run this command again, it's a little counterintuitive, but you actually want to say Duffel, you want to use install again, and you just want to give it a different name. And you want to say, we can say hello world _2, and then we'll just give it the same image name, and now you'll see that it's actually going to run our program again. And if I tried to run this a second time without changing the name, you can see a claim with hello world 2 already exists. So like I think a claim is this like permanent record of this one-time guaranteed installation. So I'm not really sure what Duffel or what CNAB describes should do if something fails, but failure mode is always exciting for these types of things. Like what's the default behavior if, say for instance, our invocation and image errored or something went wrong. So anyway, that's sort of building our first Duffel bundle. And so what's interesting here is if we actually go into my, I'm going to open up Goland IDE, you can see it's going to index over here really quick. We can come into TGIK Live. We can go into, let me open this up so folks can see. We can go into CNAB, we can go into app, and we can go into run. And because install, this is basically a shelf script, we can put whatever we want to in here. So I could get secrets, I could totally like, what else could I do? I could do a kubectl install, I could do Helm install, I could do all kinds of fun stuff here, and then I could do like echo install complete. And then this would just be my invocation image that then would do a Helm install. So the idea then being that like if you wanted to use Helm to install an operator, instead of typing Helm install, you would type Duffel build and Duffel install, and you could do this, package this all up with Duffel, but it would basically just run Helm for you. So anyway, that's what this install action does for you. So again, this is like very similar to if you've ever written a make file, and you've done like a make install or a make build or a make clean. I think these actions are sort of borrowed from the idea of like a make target. At least that's how I'm thinking about them in my head, is like commonly used verbs that do like commonly used actions. And then there's an ability to sort of like define arbitrary ones, just like you could define your own make target. And that's where the Duffel run command comes in. So again, we're doing the same types of things we've been kind of doing this whole time, but now CNAB offers us a way to standardize that so that we can come together and just start interacting with our applications in a standardized way. What you choose to do with Duffel or with CNAB is totally up to you. It can literally do anything. This is just a standardized way of wrapping that up in a generic way. So that's sort of the breakdown of Duffel and how you would use it and how you would get an application up and running. I don't really need to do a Helm install, although I guess I could, just for grins. Actually, I don't even think I have Helm installed on here. I do. No, because I have an older version of Helm where the RBAC-y stuff is a little wonky. So we could do a kubectl install. Let's install Contour. Contour install. Let's do Heptio. Heptio Contour. So we're actually just going to hack this really quick just to show how you could install something in Kubernetes with CNAB and with Duffel. So there's an install line down here. Bam. Add Contour to your cluster. Looks like we have a question here. Anasta says, too bad actions don't describe state, but steps taken. Yeah, that's a really good point. The actions don't necessarily describe an intended state. It just says an action that we hope works. Then I think how many, I guess contour deployment RBAC here is what we want to do. So I think this one-liner is going to install Contour for us. And I spun up a Kubernetes cluster before the episode. So let's do kgit, our good old kgit PO for folks at home. I alias kubectl or k is equal to kubectl. So I can do, instead of kubectl get pods, I can do this. These are all the same command, just I'm doing it the short way. Okay. Also, I learned that K-trick from Deus, speaking of all of my friends at Deus. So I think it was, I forget who the first time I saw it, but I remember it was in Boulder the first time I saw that. So anyway, let's copy our contour install line. Bam. Let's go back here and let's delete all of this. And let's just do our contour line. So now we can do our Duffel build TGIK live. So it built it. And now we can do a Duffel install. We'll call it contour. And we're going to use this invocation image here, TGIK live again. And watch this. Kubectl not found. Oh, because it's running in a container. Okay, yeah. So we would have to like first install kubectl in this container, and then we would have to use the Duffel credentials and pass our credentials from my host system into the container. And then after we have kubectl installed and we have kubectl configured, we then would be able to do a kubectl apply -f and get contour up and running. So already you're seeing there's a little bit of value in packaging this stuff up into a container, but there's a lot of complexity that goes into performing a task with Duffel when I could simply just type this here on my local computer and get the same action without having to go through specifying credentials and building a Docker container for everything. Okay, so we're not going to do that today because it's already an hour and 25 minutes into the episode, but I think for folks at home, if you've played with a container before, you understand how you would be able to actually do a kubectl install or a Helm install using an invocation here, an invocation image here in with Duffel and with CNAB. So George says, how about Helm extensions to implement CNAB and automate bundle file creation for existing Helm charts? Honestly, George, I don't know. I'm not a Helm expert, and I'm not even super familiar with what a Helm extension is. So maybe somebody else here in the our live studio audience can give a little bit more color on Helm extensions. Antoine says, very interesting. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go back up and pull up my beautiful face with my lovely purple hair and my wonderful plaid shirt on today. Oh my God, my lips are super dry. If anybody has any questions, real quick, we're going to kind of start to wind the episode down now. So usually this takes me about 5 minutes to wind the episode down. So if you have any questions, drop them in Slack, or not in Slack, in the YouTube chat. While I have everything spun up, I'm happy to try anything if there's anything you want to see. If you have any questions or you want to ask my opinion on anything, now's a good time. I'm happy to answer it. Otherwise, it's been a great episode. I hope we learned a lot about CNAB, the spec, and Duffel, one of many possible implementations of the CNAB spec, and how we can use it to standardize a package installation or like a package deployment. I guess the one thing that I wanted to point out here, and this is where the tar bits come from that I mentioned earlier. I kind of forgot about this. So put your questions in now, and I'm going to show one more thing real quick. So screen. There's my screen. Sorry, I saw my lips on the screen, so now I'm going to wipe all this dried spit off of my lips. Yeah, I'm a software engineer, you can tell. So we can do Duffel, and we can actually see, oh, here it is again, the CNAB installer. This should be a CNAB installer. We see, we have a lot of different subcommands here. So far we looked at build, and I just want to show folks a couple of other things. We can do a Duffel list. You can see all of the bundles I've installed. You can do a Duffel claims list, and you can see all of the claims I've installed. You can do a Duffel build list, and oh, just kidding, finding Duffel config file. I'm unsure where that error came from. Anyway, you can come and poke around. We did Duffel install, we did Duffel init, but what I was alluding to, let's do that, let's clear our screen here and run this again, is import and export. So basically, import and export basically is the same as tar and untar. So you can actually tar up your Duffel bundle here, and that is like a unique artifact that you could then pass around. Like you could stick that on a thumb drive if you wanted to, and you could pass that around to somebody else, and you could then do an import and import that later. And then this also reminds me of this other important feature I wanted to point out along the way, is this concept of a Kubernetes driver. So here I'm sorry, like it's just on the fly thinking I was going to talk about this earlier, but I forgot to mention it. So just a few more minutes and then we'll wind the episode down. Okay, so there's a Kubernetes driver. If you come back to the HackMD, there's a PR. It doesn't work yet, but they're actively working on it. Let's see, where is this thing? The Kubernetes Duffel driver. So there's this pull request here. And here is, wait, did that not? Oh, I think just the link is off there. We can fix that afterwards. Anyway, we're working on this Kubernetes driver, and you could pass the -- driver Kubernetes to use the driver. And I think basically you could do a Duffel install -- Kubernetes, and instead of like executing run, there would be yet another abstraction on top of this that would allow you to like basically run this thing in Kubernetes instead of running it locally. So instead of having to do a Helm install in your invocation image, this would just automatically try to shove something up in Kubernetes for you. I'm assuming it might do something similar to like what Draft does and try to interpret your program. But excited to see where this thing goes and how we can use this for Kubernetes natively moving forward. So I'm watching this PR closely, and if you want to like hit the watch button or the star button up here at the top of the repo, you can keep an eye on this PR as well. Martine says, thank you for the intro. I liked your makefile analogy. Very welcome. Okay, so unless anybody has any other questions, it's been real. I love hanging out here. It's good to see everyone. We'll see you. I don't think we're going to do a TGIK next week because we're going to be at KubeCon. So, well, I mean, we're going to have TGIK live next week, live at KubeCon. That unfortunately will not be live streamed. So it's totally like an ephemeral. If you're there, you get to see it. And if you're not, we're sorry. We'll try to get something more next time. So we'll see folks next week here in Seattle, and then I think we'll be back the week after for TGIK as usual. So let us know what you want to see. Drop an issue in, ping me or Joe. We're happy to do episodes on whatever you want. And let's see what folks in the chat are saying as we're saying goodbye to all of our friends. Zolt says, thanks for a great episode. Anastas says, one could stick whatever into deb package with install, upgrade, uninstall triggers and do the same thing, or RPM or R for that matter, assign them, etc. Anastas brings up a fantastic point. I'm an Arch Linux girl, so AUR, the Arch user repository, and even some of the other Arch repositories like Yaort, do basically the same thing. When I was looking at this, all I could see was, if you're familiar with like even FreeBSD package, if you're familiar with like the make package command in Arch or any of the other like Debian or RPM files, they all sort of do the same sort of like thing of standardizing how you're going to build something. And it just passes in environmental information, and then we just expect whatever your program is to respect those. As you, like if you want to go explore the FreeBSD ports, you can see that PKG basically is another standardization, just like CNAB, for defining how you're going to do this kind of stuff. And that's how all the FreeBSD ports work. So if you want to install, well, don't install Docker on FreeBSD because that just don't. But yeah, if you want to install like Emacs on FreeBSD, you'll actually be running a very similar program similar to Duffel that's going to then run some other arbitrary logic that's responsible for actually installing Emacs, and then each of those ports maintainers keep up with it. So you already see patterns very similar to this all throughout the Linux ecosystem as well. This is just sort of like the cloud native-y version that sort of extends the OSI model and uses images instead of executables. So that's the big difference here. So Bob says, planning to buy several rounds at KubeCon. See you next week. Olav says, quite interesting. Nice walkthrough. George, other George says, thanks. Great to have breakfast watching TGIK. Good to see you, George. Great to see everyone. Thanks for a great episode. We'll see everyone at KubeCon next week, and we'll see everybody back here live from the Heptio studios the week after for another exciting episode, our 60th episode of TGIK. So thanks again, everybody. Have a good weekend. I will talk to y'all later.